Welcome back, everybody. So glad you could be with me here today. So, today we're actually going to do something where I will be teaching you how I do it. It has to do with finishing. I haven't talked much about finishing because finishing is a world of its own. And I don't know how to say this nicely, but everybody and their uncle will be out there telling you, use this, use that, use this and use that to sell that item, okay? They don't explain to you the pros and the cons. So let's start at the beginning. One of the first most important things about wood finishing is the wood itself. You have open-grained woods and you have closed-grained woods. Tight closed-grained woods, really wide open-grained woods like red oak, which you can blow air through. All right. Other open-grained woods are walnut, ash, mahogany. Typical closed-grained woods would be hard and soft maple, cherry, the alders. Beech is sort of on the fence. It is really kind of tight-grained, but it is very close in relationship to oak in how it behaves and so on. So you have to first off decide what wood you're using. Once you know what wood you're using, then you have to know how it was cut. Does it contain all heartwood, or is there some sapwood? Or it may be all sapwood. So when you go to a big box store, a lumberyard, and you look at a very simple pine board, and I say pine, what I'm really referring to is white pine, preferably eastern white pine, but sometimes they sell ponderosa pine and other pines because that's what they have available. You'll notice there's an orange heartwood and a white sapwood. When you work with wood like that, the white sapwood is going to cut, plane, chisel, sand, any process differently than the heartwood. They will take stain differently. The sapwood will go blotchy, the heartwood will not. Very similar to tulip poplar. Tulip poplar is the same way. Cherry and walnut, if the sapwood's small, you won't notice it so much. But in walnut as well, it's the white sapwood is stringy, doesn't cut and plane as nicely as the older, nice, dark heartwood. All right. So now you've decided what wood you're using. You've got to decide if it is all heartwood or if it's a mix of heartwood and sapwood. Now, what do you want it to look like? Do you want it to be au natural? Clear finish? Let it age gracefully on its own. With pine, the heartwood will go more and more orange, and the sapwood will go a little creamier to tan. Same with tulip poplar. The green in tulip poplar will go brownish, creamy brownish, similar to pine. And the sapwood will go a creamy tan. White hard maple, remember I said white hard maple, because there is some hard maple that's brown streak in it and other brown figuring. Same with soft maple can have grayish brown markings in it. But white maple will predominantly stay that whitish to yellow honey color. Cherry starts out pinkish. Remember we talked on this one about where the sticker was and how it's a little lighter in there. It starts out very light pink, and over time with sun and oxidation it begins to look more and more like mahogany. That's why here in Pennsylvania and in the colonies it was called poor man's mahogany. And walnut, I think we've talked about walnut a little bit in the past. Walnut begins its life in a greenish, turquoise-ish, weird color. Then it begins to get darker and darker and darker. And then when you work it, it gets a little lighter and it looks a little bit like milk chocolate. And then when you finish it, it looks more like bittersweet chocolate. But if allowed to sit in the sun, this will bleach out and get lighter over time. All right. So if you're leaving your woods natural, then the whole world of clear finishes is where we want to talk about. But if you're going to do staining, now you got to get into that rabbit hole. Do you want a dye stain? Do you want a pigmented stain? In the dye stains, do you want water-based or you want alcohol-based? When I say alcohol-based, sometimes the dye stains begin as an alcohol-based and they add some sort of oils and other solvents to it, and that's your solvent-based dye stain. And the pigmented stains have just that. They have pigments added to it. Burnt umber, raw umber, burnt sienna, raw sienna, yellow, okay, all those natural colors. So, more of the modern water, now be careful when you say water-based, because nothing is water-based. It begins as some sort of a solvent slash oil or alkyd or some resin mixture that is dissolved and then emulsified and mixed with water. So it's actually water-borne. Okay? It means it's the dyes and everything else, and the finishes are all suspended. They're born on the water, okay? There's a lot of acrylics in the water, and the acrylics will keep your woods light in color. They don't allow the finish to change color. That's why you have to stain first. Okay, if you want cherry to look like this, you have to stain it to the color you want if you're going to use a water-borne clear top coat. But let's keep it simple. We're going to drop all the other discussion on finishing because we could be here from now until the end of time. What I'm doing here today is I am giving these a polish and a touch-up. So, they've been washed with mineral spirits, allowed to dry and flash off a day or two. Now I'm taking 4-aught steel wool. Now, I don't care what brand you get. A lot of people swear by one brand or over the other. I just get what I can get, where I can get it, all right? If money were no object, I'd mail order for certain brands, which we shall not talk about. So, you have a pad of 4-aught steel wool. Now, if you want to just keep the pad together in one pad, that's fine. If you want to be more economical, you pull them apart. Just pull them apart. Okay? And then you've got a small pad. So going with the grain, okay, with the grain, and on a bowl, the grain is going from one end to the other. I'm just going to, you can hear, it's a little rough in spots. I'm just going to what's known as denib or burnish. And you'll hear it louder on the end grain. Right there I'm going to go circular, but then come back with the grain. Circular, and then with the grain. Until I feel I have smoothed it out. Then I'll go wrap it around the rim. And I'm not so much worried about the grain here. I'm just denibbing, taking any raised grain off from the mineral spirits may have raised the grain a little bit. Moisture in the air may have raised the grain a little bit. All right? I'm pretty much done. Go on the back side. I'm not going to mess around too much on the inside where I have signed it. Okay? I'm just going to go around the bottom a little bit. And then with the grain, just with the grain, okay? Now, it would be nice if I had an air compressor to blow this off afterwards, but we'll be all right with the grain. And here's where that sticker was. Against the grain, go around the circle here, then with the grain. 4-0 steel wool is the finest you can get. And I would say it leaves a nice burnished surface. All right. Now you can just lightly, I have these little grooves here, I'm blowing any dust out. And then, I use a lot of paper towel. I'm not going to tell you where I buy mine, but it's one of those clubs. And now you just dust it off. Okay, I don't know if you can see it now, but there is a light sheen to it. Can you see that? Yeah, there you go. You can see it. All right? It has a shine to it. And now if I wanted to, I have a choice of application of products to refresh this. I could start with just an oil with a little bit of wax in it. I could use just wax. I could use just oil. Whatever you choose. I know what the base of this was. The base of this was either pure flax oil, which flax oil is linseed oil, or it was walnut oil, because that's what I was using at the time. Now you want to make sure you keep those steel wool particles off of your work area. And that you remember, these had steel wool particles on it, so don't put these where you're going to use finish. Okay. The product du jour of choice today will be from Tried and True. Now, Tried and True is a polymerized linseed oil. Polymerized linseed oil means that they heated it up in they say an oxygen-free chamber. So it's not really a vacuum, but they've pulled the oxygen out of it. Or displaced the oxygen maybe with something else. They heated it up until it reached polymerization which polymerization technically is a cure, but it's like pre-cured. And then they cooled it before opening the chamber and allowing oxygen in. So it is more or less what would have been called real boiled linseed oil from 300 years ago, except made in a modern, safe way. This particular one is the one I use now on all my bowls and other food products. They call it Danish oil. And it's sort of confusing because most people understand Danish oil to be a mixture of solvents, oil, and varnish. This is not. This is pure polymerized linseed oil. That's all this is. Their original product, tried and true original, was the oil and wax mixture. Now, the reason I used that one first is because I could put multiple coats of that on, one on top of the other on top of the other, without any wax interference. This one is the final coat. It's the one on the end, because it has the wax in it. It has beeswax and polymerized linseed oil. I'll leave a link to both of these products down in the description box. I have gloves on, but I don't need to. I don't need to wear dust masks, respirators. In fact, if you take a cutting board or a salad bowl and you put this one on, or that one, you let it soak in for 15 minutes or whatever, then burnish it, then buff it off, you could put your cereal or your salad in it immediately. It's not recommended. You could though. It's that food safe. So it's safe to your hands, it's safe for the environment, and so on and so forth. And if you start to see me perspire, it's because we made it over 80 degrees today. We finally came out of the Arctic tundra here. And that is another topic for another day, and that is woodworking in a non-climate controlled environment. Now it's fairly dry. It was fairly dry today. We didn't go above like 60% humidity, which is relatively low. Our dew point was down below 60, so it's a good day to do something like this. But it's hot, and I got lights and more lights. I'm burning about 1,000 watts right now. That's just like having a heater on. So, no apologies for the perspiration. It's cleansing of the soul. All right. So tried and true, original, traditional oil finish. It is thick. Nothing wrong with it. Okay? So I take a piece of paper towel, and I buy the ones that you get sort of a half sheet, and I fold it up until I create an applicator. Okay? Just create a little applicator, and then being that it's so warm, it is a little more viscous today, but you just get a corner of it, okay? Not much. That'll be plenty for an entire bowl, possibly two. And you just rub it in. It smells great. If you've ever done oil painting, I'll try to hold it up here so you can see it, but I don't normally work like this. If you've ever taken painting classes, you know, artiste, you know, with a brush, it smells a lot like artists' linseed oil. It's a very fine, pure linseed oil. And it's got some beeswax mixed in it. See how nice that is? Get the rim. And all the videos and instructions say to apply in a very, very, very thin coat. All right, so that's the inside and the rim. What do you think? Now we're just going to let that set up. In the meantime, we'll work on the walnut bowl. Back to the steel wool. Now 4-0. It can be 4/0. It can be 4 zeros in a row. And an old method, old English method of pronouncing it is 4-aught. And it's A-U-G-H-T. 4-aught. Okay, once again, with the grain, circular. Get into that corner and burnish it out. You go to the bottom. I know this is exciting, but it goes quick. But you can hear that. As you knock those nibs down, you're burnishing it and it gets smoother. And that's part of the instructions for the tried and true. Once you've sanded to perfection, and what that is for you may be different than for me, but let's call it 320 grit, maybe 400. Then what you want to do is burnish it with the 4-aught steel wool. Apply a thin coat of your choice of tried and true. Remember I told you that this walnut was just odd? And it seems like the grain raised a lot on this. We got this one. All right. It's so much easier to do when it's spinning on the lathe. All right. Remember the towels that were used for the steel wool? Well, you're going to use them again here. And I go through a lot of paper towels, so I'm going to give you a couple of pro tips. If you're dusting things off with paper towel, remember you're contaminating the paper towel as you go. So don't expect it to be able to be used for anything other than what you're doing. And then even then, you'll have to dispose of some from time to time. Alrighty. Alrighty, guys and gals, there you go. See the sheen? See the sheen? There you go. That's just from what was there originally and burnishing it out. Okay. Time to get makeup in here. Makeup! Thank you. I tell you, good help is hard to find these days. Makeup people, you know? They position your hat just right, make sure you're looking the right way. All right. So remember I said there might be enough on here even for 2 bowls? We're not even going to dip it again. Let's see. Ooh, look at that. Look at that. See what I said about thin coats? It doesn't take much. So when you look at the price of the tried and true, keep in mind that it keeps for a very long time if you keep it sealed and you keep it in a cool place, not like this. You apply it the same way, just rub it in. Now another pro tip. When you're working with wood finishes, remember anything like linseed oil, walnut oil, tung oil, oil-based stains, oil-based finishes. If you're using rags, and rags include paper towels. Oh, I have to explain everything. Paper towels or cloth towels are the same thing. One does not save you from being safe or not. All right. We did have enough on there. Look at that. Look at the coloring and the grain texture. All right. Let's say I was finished with this. If I were to just wad this up and throw it on the floor or leave it on the workbench, there's a possibility, and it's a pretty good possibility, it depends on a lot of things, but a crumbled up piece of cloth or towel, or even if you dribble it in sawdust or shavings, if it's tight enough, heat can build up. And when heat builds up, because this is trying to dry, it's linseed oil, it's a drying oil, it's trying to dry. So as it dries, it heats up and it could spontaneously combust. Simpler term, it could go on fire. So I unfold these and either lay them flat on a concrete surface, preferably a cold concrete floor, or you could hang them up with a clothespin, or you could drape them like this over a wire, and they'll dry without heating up. If that doesn't make you feel safe enough, take them like this, put them in a bucket and pour water on top of them. The next day, drain off the water, take the wet rags, throw them away. Safety. All right. And that goes for all finishing cloths or rags or towels. I'm not going to talk about motor oil type products because I don't know enough about them, but let's assume if you go to a machine shop and you see a metal fire bucket that says oily rags, perhaps there's a safety issue there as well. All right. Clean paper towels. Now, generally I take 2 pieces. Why? I got 2 hands. Because what it does, it protects my hands from touching the finishing surface. And now I burnish off the oil that was left on the inside. Not all of it, but most of it. Okay? Alright, so that leaves you a silky, smooth inside. And I keep one cloth handy to hold it. And I take my applicator once again. And this time I will dip it again. Okay, that's about how much. Because out here is a lot of end grain. And I'll put some there. And I'll put some there. And I'll make sure that my end grain is covered completely. I really love cherry. Cherry is my favorite wood. All right. So you see how simple this finish is. You may want to give it a try. It works great on flat work too, as you know, small shelves, jewelry boxes, cutting boards, serving spoons. And it doesn't have to be just for food safe items, it can be for anything. But you can see there, that's where the sticker was. Oh well. We'll leave it where the sun can hit it some more. Maybe it'll level out. And if not, it's way on the bottom. All right. There we go. That's that one. Now I'm not going to burnish this one off yet because it really hasn't had a lot of time to soak. But I am going to put a little more on the bottom so we can be done. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, leave them down in the comment section. I look forward to reading them. And I hope this was helpful and that you may find some joy in using this great product, because I know that my nose and my sinuses and my lungs really do appreciate not getting hammered with solvents much. And yes, I am sweating. You know that old saying, don't let them see you sweat? It doesn't always apply. Sweat means you're doing something. All right. So we got a nice application on the walnut bowl on the bottom. Now we'll go back to the cherry bowl. Burnish that some more with paper towel. You can see how nice that is. Look at that. And it's such a thin coat. I can put another coat on top of this, and I don't have to do the steel wool. I can just go right to it. And if you put these grooves in things, you may need to stick your fingernail in it with the paper towel to make sure you don't have any wax or finish buildup in there. Yeah, we had a little bit. See the dark? Yep, there's a little bit there. And now we'll do the walnut one inside. Oh yeah, that is smooth, smooth. Ah. And then this will harden. It will harden over time. So the longer you can give anything to just relax and harden, it will. And there's the walnut. Beautiful. Well, everybody, as I always say, if you have not yet subscribed, we welcome you to do so. And I hope that you found something useful, helpful, maybe entertaining. And if you did, give it the old thumbs up. Appreciate it. And as always, head out to your shop. Go make something. Go finish something. Check the link below. Tried and true finishes. They're beautiful. Walter out.